Mike Learn here, and I'm working on a custom Jackson guitar that the theme of it is the ultimate chess game, final checkmate, decapitation, little blood splatter, checkerboard, little atmosphere in the background. It's a very technical piece in the sense that it involves a sequence of masking and the layering of which and the unpeeling in the process. So it's technical in that standpoint. Rendering wise, it's pretty simple, but there's kind of an order in which I've been going about this. Now I've already done the white king here, and he's the one who had his head chopped off, and his head sitting over here underneath his body over here. So now I'm working on the black king, and what I'm going to be doing is taking some white and rendering that over top of the black. So the first thing I'm going to do is really kind of take a study of the image, and fortunately I did have the other piece to kind of like prepare me for a good order in which I tear down the vinyl mask. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up here first with the sword, and I'm going to be taking in consideration where the lighting is on this, and I'm also going to try saving the pieces as I did with my other knight or king that I actually have already airbrushed. So you can see I've got a little collection of parts, and you know, I always cut a second one too. I usually will cut an excess piece just so I have duplicate and be able to grab them when I need them. So I've done the same here. So you can barely see it. I doubt you can pick this up in the camera, but I am going to start airbrushing with the sword. So a couple things you can do when you're using these masks. Rather than cutting, like say, a highlighted edge, what I'll do is I'll just peel that one out and I'll drop it in just like so, and that's going to give me a really crisp highlighted edge, which I'm going to apply considerable amount of paint. Now the paint is actually reduced down quite a bit for the rendering on this, so I want to be careful I don't just like flood this little area. So it may look like I'm painting the whole time, but I'm actually just delivering air on some strokes and only letting paint out every so often, a little bit here and there, just to prevent it from running down the side of the guitar here. So now I can take this out, and I've got a nice little highlight along the edge of that, and I'm going to do some kind of diagonal strokes with the white here. And I'm going to peel out the other one. I'm going to put them both right up in this area here. It's tough sometimes to keep track of where you put these masks, but you always have another set cut if you need them, so it's not that big of a deal. Now I'm doing very light applications, and normally on the larger areas where I've removed the mask, I will run some degreaser to get rid of some of that static that's created from the surface when you remove the mask. And next I'm going to do this particular hand. I'm going to leave that pommel or handguard kind of intact. I'm going to work my way around it. So I'm going to use this little guy here for some of the highlights. And this is just going to be done very subtle. Remember, this is a black chess piece that's going to be reflecting the highlights here. And on this one, I will use the upper edge to lay down that mask to help define some of the reflection and highlights on top of the hand. And then I'll peel it out of the way, and I'll consider that done. Now this will go pretty fast as I'm doing it. The tricky part, like I said, is deciding on which order you want to do things. And I try to pick it apart in according to a couple different things. Like this one here, I'm picking out the end of the sword here. I'm going to put it right up there. And I'm doing that because I want it to be lighter than the area around. Kind of almost like if the sword had a little bit of a metallic quality to it. And I dropped it back in to help define some of the dimension of that. And just a really quick little application, and I'll put this out back there. And because the highlight's coming in this way, I'm not going to get too carried away there. Just enough so that it's not completely pure black, because I want the checkers to remain somewhat black in the background. So I need enough contrast to pull the elements of the chess pieces away from the background. Let's see. Which one should I do next? I suppose I should do this one. I'll do this one. Try to be careful peeling these, picking them up, and putting them in place. I like to try to put them in place in the same orientation of which they've been removed from the masking system. Makes it a little easier to find them, but sometimes I forget, and that's the way it rolls. So, a little shielding. Now this one I'm going to do the same thing too. I'm going to kind of just pick up that edge a little bit, just so it's enough that I'm getting that highlight separation from the rest of it here. And it comes down the back of the hand. And a little on the edge. So that part, this part here, the hand and the arm are done. Now I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to this next section here, and I'm going to remove this little part for the arm on the back side, and I'm going to lightly put in highlight. Now that I got that done, I can go ahead and remove this hand guard here and just give it a light color. You know what I'm going to do? Just because I'm going to do it that way, I'm going to put a little highlight on this edge here. So I'm going to drop this back in and focus on the outside of the hand guard. That. Just enough to give the highlight on that edge, which you won't really see until I peel this whole thing. So, moving down to the bottom side, what I'm going to do is kind of like meet in the middle as I'm working my way up. I'm going to do the highlight around the base of the chest piece here. And what I'm going to do is kind of imagine lights almost kind of coming in, almost like a 45 behind them. And you'll see that when I do the shadows later on. So this is going to be a really tight, actually, you know what? I'm going to add this to this first. I'm going to punch out a highlight that separates these rather than just letting these objects kind of blend together. So what I'm doing is dropping this piece back in, and you can see I'm just putting a little bit of a highlighted edge in there, just for separation and a little bit of kind of clarity as to these shapes. One thing I also want to do is make sure that I get these edges all pressed down here. I got a pickup cover down in here. I think what I'm going to do is come in here with my razor blade, and I'm going to separate this mask here so I can make sure that I got the contact that I want along the image, and the vinyl is going to go down into this pickup cover. As you can see, I'm kind of pushing it down in there. So the pickups are underneath here. There's a humbucker here, there's a single coil here. Alright, so now I'm going to come in here, and it barely hits there. little highlight on that edge, and I'm going to peel this back out again. Now some of these masks won't be in one piece when I take them out now, but I can always go grab the other. So here I've got a highlight that's kind of sneaking around the edge here, and the same thing from the far side. Just going to kind of blend it in. Maybe just a light reflection right here. Now going up to the next piece, I'm going to grab here. This is coming off in two parts because I had to cut the mask, which is okay. And I'm going to do, excuse me, I'm going to do the same thing along that edge there that I did previously to the other shape, which helps give a little bit of separation. Just like that. What I'm going to do is aim for this space right through here. And I'm just going to put a little mask up there, a little shield, help prevent a little bit of blowover on that cut separation, so you can see the effect of what I'm going for here. You see that nice little tight highlight right there in that edge. It helps bring that piece a little bit more dimension and separate between the shapes. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my highlight and I'm going to give a nice strong reflection here. I'm going to use this little loose shield. This whole thing will kind of give these a little bit of an appearance of having some sheen to them. So the highlight will be up there and over here. Got to remove this other little piece that was left over from the cut. I'll just put them all on the same piece. And just a little there, and then a little reflection right here. Now you can start to see, excuse me, some of the effect of the static. So as I'm working on these pieces, I keep a little paper towel around with some degreaser on it, and it's really difficult to see, but it'll get rid of the modeling that happens from the static when you do remove your mask. And so I'll just go ahead and take care of that as each piece kind of pops up. That was the biggest one. It's probably the only one really going to notice it on. So you notice I'm going in an order from here. And I'm kind of like taking these things and just going to drop them down right like that. And picking them up. So it's almost paint by number. Actually, you know what? I'm going to get this little highlight piece here that I missed off that other shape. So I want to make sure that I get that highlight right up into the corner of that sword. Like that. And then I'm going to remove this one as I have been with the other ones. And I'm offsetting it just a hair. And, you know, the whole reason for this and working with this mask is because I don't like cutting on the surface of the instruments or anything, motorcycles and anything like that. It's debatable whether or not people say, oh, that's cheating. Well, you know, I'm using the tools that are out there for me. I'm trying to enable myself to get the best possible piece that I'm done. It's going to look very tight, very technical with this style of artwork. And rendering it freehand really wouldn't necessarily do it any justice. And my goal is to make sure my customer is satisfied with the results, and as well as myself being satisfied with the results. So the method in which it is being done is really irrelevant to me, as long as the results are what I expect. and hope for. Couple little highlights. Now I'm going to roll up into the next piece. And you can kind of see the sequence makes sense when you're doing this stuff. And maybe that's the most difficult part of using a masking system like this, be it with like our Warbird kits or any other mask, you know. And maybe that's the biggest learning curve of actually using these and trying to figure out which order do you actually go in and grab the piece. And I get that. And I can't really say that there's a consistent way to do it. Sometimes you might create more work for yourself, but in the end, I think the results are going to be superior compared to, like, imagine airbrushing all this stuff freehand. It just would not have the same look that it does. Let me take this. Actually, yeah, I'm going to do this. So even as I'm doing it, I am thinking about what is the best way to go through this process. And I might change my mind. I might have to double mask because maybe I made the incorrect decision as to which way to go, and that happens. And there's nothing wrong with that. It actually helps you educate yourself for future jobs like this when you do make mistakes as far as the order in which you might go through the mask and stuff. So don't be frustrated when you're starting off with this type of project or something technical where you're using the mask and you don't exactly know where you should go as far as which mask goes first. So stay in shadow, so this one will be highlighted next. And going around, you can kind of see the way in which it's coming out, that the order I'm going with is working pretty good. And obviously when you're overspraying, you know, you don't have to worry about coming back in and masking this off to protect it because you're working with the same value, but the way I'm shading it is I'm kind of keeping it away, but even if it did overspray onto it, it really doesn't make much of a difference. So and I'm going to use my loose shield to kind of add some of these little highlights there. Alright, so the next piece is going to come up and do this piece. And I'm just going to keep going up and up so I do the crown. And it'll be pretty much it. Now I won't be coming back in and rendering with black. All I'm doing right now is setting up the highlights on a black piece. So I try not to get too redundant, but it also forces me to be very clean in the application here when I'm doing this. I want to make sure that I'm getting enough light to tell the story, but not oversaturating the white so that it no longer looks like a black chess piece. Now, because of the way that this shape is returned and there's a kind of a cap on the crown here, I'm going to start right here rather than the next piece that would have come up. And you'll kind of see why here shortly. I'm going to save that piece. So I'm going to pick this highlight off this edge here. I'm going to just kind of use my loose shield to pick that up. Like so. And then I'm going to follow around with that curve a little bit. Just enough. Same thing there. And then I'm going to put this piece right back in just enough to get that highlight that I want, separating that shape from the next. And once you get going on this, it goes really quick. It actually took longer to do the vector work in CorelDRAW than probably to actually go through and peel each paint each paste. But so the composition was all done in CorelDRAW. It was actually started off with the image that I drew in Procreate, which was a very loose sketch. And then I came in and I actually created the paths that we have here. And that's the sequence in which I put this together. It was nice because I didn't waste any time with it because the customer got a chance to see it as it progressed with the drawing, the rendering. So he got to see exactly what's going on, which is cool for customers who don't necessarily have the same vision as you do. So it's not necessarily lost work. It can get abusive at times, but you know, fortunately I got it on the first crack this time. So I'd much rather have customers make changes or add input at this stage in the game rather than afterwards, as far as like having the paintwork done and stuff. So another bonus of working with technology. Right, this is going to have just a little, there we go, just a little bit, just a little. And then finally, let's peel off the front of the cross. And it's separated, so I'm just going to pull it. And I'm just going to give it a wipe. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take the degreaser again. I'm just going to wipe that down. And wipe this all down. And the degreaser will help pull up anything that might be there. Last chance to get it. A little white coating on that, and then I'm going to peel this piece off. You know what I'm going to do first though? I'm going to take my highlight, I'm going to pop this edge, I'm going to grab the shield, put it in there, and it's going to look something like that, and I'm just going to put a little highlight right there on that edge, and that's going to separate for the next step. And then this piece will just about be done. And where we got his shoulder right there. And I'm going to do the shoulder on this, and I'm going to do that with my little loose shield as well. This one, I'm going to put a little detail piece across there. And just a little more detail like armor. And that's pretty much it. Except for this little guy right here. Just pop that and just a light dusting over that. So now, the last piece, and we'll grab this, peel it up, and I'm just going to hit that highlighted edge. And I'm going to pick a nice kind of flat, there we go. And that's a her. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to cut the mask for this to cut out in its completeness. And I'm going to put that down, and then we'll start weeding the checkers out. So inside of my vector program, what I did was I had this actually completely drawn, segmented into these little pieces. So what I did now is I went and got rid of all those internal pieces and just focused on the perimeter of the shape, and I'm just going to drop this in very carefully. And you don't want to like try to stretch it while you're putting it down, so you got to be kind of careful when you're holding it in your hands and putting the mask down that you're not like pulling on it, because you can distort it and it will cause some issues with alignment. So sometimes it's good to be able to pull it when you're going over top of curved surfaces. Other times it's not. Sometimes it's good to put a relief cut in it when you need to, like on a good shape. Like say you're trying to just get it exactly perfect, and you could put a relief cut here if you wanted. I think I can get this all to, I'm going to put the relief cut on just to make it easier. I'm going to put the relief cut on, that way I can line these up in two separate pieces, and that will be just like that. Now you do want to try to get it as close as you can, otherwise you get these little black lines or little spaces and stuff. And some of it's not so bad, but you can burnish the piece back in with your finger to make sure you got the alignment really good. So now I got to do the bottom piece. I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Alright, so you can see got this all cut out, just one piece, and I'm just going to grab this section, peel it out, and notice there's no internal cuts. Corel has got some pretty cool tools. I really like it. Illustrator's cool too. I just kind of lent myself to be more educated with Corel. Not to say one is better than the other. I think it's just a matter of the platform that you're using, be it PC or Mac.
I'll say one's better than the other.
Oh, I know you will. But I will say that I like the usage of the Mac for certain things. Obviously, Procreate has just been a game changer for me. So, still though, dealing with vectors, I find myself more comfortable with CorelDRAW. Now, I have to relocate. See, this was the black one, so I'm going to make this one white square for the contrast, and I think I'm going to start that off first, and then I will accordingly go around and pick all these objects out to where I'm going to be spraying the white. So this can get a little confusing, but if you start with one square and you just keep working off the corner of that square, like right here, just kind of lightly pick it up. I don't want to like create, I'm not like gouging it when I'm going in there with it, my X-Acto knife. Some people can be a little heavy-handed with this type of equipment, and I suggest that you try to lighten your approach a little bit, because fixing craters is no fun. Some of that stuff will get, if I did perhaps put like some sort of deep gouge or something in here, I would clear it, make the repair, and clear it again. And as most cases, I generally clear twice. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
No bullet holes on this one to cover your...
Right. There's no bullet holes, although I could cover it with blood splatter, because this is getting blood splatter. So I could have a well-placed blood drop if necessary to cover any sort of foul or infraction, which it happens. It happens. It's happened before. It probably will happen again. But having said all that, I'm trying to be real careful with this X-Acto knife. Oftentimes you use a single-edged blade too, which is nothing wrong with that. Like that little guy. Okay, so you can see I'm just going to go in here and just consecutively grab the squares. This will be the boring part. We'll fast forward that. As you can see, it's very technical. Very technical. Don't want to get lost in your squares. So yeah, you can see this is starting to come along. I'm gonna rub it down with a little degreaser before I shoot. Put a couple relief cuts in, get these things around the corners. I might come back in with a black haze around the very edge. Time for the mask, fan, and highlights with the white checkers. Well, I'm gonna go around carefully, and I'm going to use some degreaser, which will kill the static that we have on these pieces. And the way that I'm going to be doing the gradient on here, it's pretty important that I'm not dealing with static cling. So I want to be very careful not to peel up edges. At the same time, I'm going to make sure that I've got this stuff neutralized. Take a couple minutes to do it, but the end results will thank you. I wanna thank you. Sucks, man. Every time I woke up last couple days, man, I had like ZZ Top songs running through my head. Just psychosis at this time, I guess. Got my first gig this weekend. That's Krusty Hill bass player. First gig as a bass player. Crazy, huh?
Bum, bum.
40 years, more than that, 45 years of playing guitar. And all of a sudden I'm a bass player. Alright. But not to be concerned. Oh, I just totally like picked up a very little square right there. Yeah.
Where? I didn't even see it.
Yeah,
Oh.
right there. Little triangular piece. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of my FBS yellow, UTG gold, 1/4 inch tape, and I'm going to line it up right where that other piece was, and I'm going to peel it off, and then I'm going to take the razor blade, and it's going to go just like that.
Boom.
Back in action. Every square, it looks good. Squares are out, squares are out. Got a little perspective going on there. Alright. Let's see what happens. Alright, I'm going to take a little water. Lightly cut it. I got the white done, and I add some little dots and some water spotting in there just to kind of add to the whole effect of what I'm going to be getting at the end of this project. There's going to be some blood splatter on there, and I'm also going to do a little distressing very lightly to the black, and you'll notice there's a gradient that runs brighter and it's going to get darker as it moves away, which is helping me set up for a very light transition into almost like a background beyond the board. Alright, and just enough of that effect, and I will be doing the same thing again here. Only in the foreground. And that gives me just enough surface there. And I'm going to take this now. Peel this off. And I will be taking the marvelous FBS Pro Mask. And then running it right across the top of that. Before I unpeel everything. And you can see that if we were really having to like cut out all these pieces, oh my god. I would be easily 2 days in this project. Cutting, 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 cutting. Then you're gonna have all these cut marks in your work, and that's not gonna leave you happy at all. And that's her. Now I can peel the whole thing. And it kind of has a cool 80s vibe to it. And then I'll be doing the blood splatter. Strategically, not to destroy all my work. I'll probably cut another set of masks. But I just want to be able to see this, and I'm going to leave this here, and I'm going to do a shadow, which I'll cut out, that I actually got cut out, and we'll use that in the mask, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. Alright, now I'm going to give this a good degreasing first, before I do the shadows. Kind of has a nice look to it with a little bit of degreaser on it. Alright, so when I degrease it, basically what the degreaser is getting rid of all the particles, maybe dust, that have settled in on some of this paint job. But now I'm going to do this. I'm going to get the mask for the shadows, and then I'll start doing the blood splatter. So it's going to be real light contrast in the black area, but as I get up towards this, just enough of a little reflection there. Right. I think we will call that one a wrap till after lunch. Alright, so the customer had a specific request, and that was with the addition of some blood drips and stuff. Very closely reminiscent of Warren DeMartini's blood drip skull guitar that was made in the 80s. So that's what I'm going with, and I'm going to try to calculate or estimate how much of a run based upon the viscosity of this. I'm going to try to get some here but not run it on over top of the artwork. So I'm going to start out over here where the runs aren't going to make that much of a difference. And I'm going to start with just a little, and I want to see where it takes us. So give me an idea of how far I can let it run. Time-consuming process here. And you can always add a little bit more to the runs that you have. And as you can see, this is a time-consuming process in the sense that I have to control this. Normally I would be taking paint sticks and red paint and just going everywhere, but I have to be very precise in my application so I don't destroy. So now I got my little Vondago brush, this little guy here, and I'm gonna do there should be, and I think while I'm here, see if I can't get some of this stuff to level out a little bit without pulling color underneath it. I don't think there's really any way you're going to get around that. And it's really a trade-off, because when you do this, if you try to get the viscosity down so that you don't get these big ends on this, oftentimes what happens is it gets too thin and too transparent. You don't get the opacity that you want out of the blood drips. And so, yeah. You go with the thicker paint, but what I'm going to do is I'll let this paint dry all weekend, and then I'll probably put a couple coats of Intercoat Clear on there, and then I will lightly wet sand this before I go to a urethane clear, and then I will have to clear it twice. I might as well put my signature in blood. It is official. And I'm going to take a little bit more cleanup around the base of this thing. It looks like it's... There you go. And there you have it.